Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we're going to talk about why Iowa-class battleships don't have lifeboats. One of the earliest things that a child who's interested in naval history learns about is Titanic, and practically everyone can tell you that the problem with Titanic is she didn't carry enough lifeboats for the amount of passengers on board. And yet Titanic was never supposed to be in any situation where she could sink. Battleships, designed to go in harm's way, carry as few lifeboats as possible. Why on earth is this? So, battleships have a crew that's relatively comparable to Titanic, around 2,000 people on average. Most dreadnought-type battleships and even battleships into World War II were designed to carry a significant number of boats. This is more for peacetime service. With a large crew, you're not only using your boats as an emergency evacuation method, but also you need them to move around when you're in port. And it's quite common in these types of ships to assign junior officers to the boats. And so it is an early command opportunity for them to learn how to maintain a small vessel and do that sort of stuff. The boats will also be used a lot in athletic endeavors. It's quite common for different ships to race their oar-powered boats against each other. So especially in the interwar years, this was a common thing, and almost certainly earlier than that. So battleships, including the Iowa class, were designed to carry lifeboats, primarily amidships. So I'm standing in front of this model of Bismarck right now, and you can see that between her forward and aft superstructure is just a complete vehicle park. There are at least 10, 11, 12, 13, there's somewhere around 16 boats that you can see stacked around the middle of the ship, and some aircraft. They're taking up valuable amidships real estate because the overpressure from the guns can destroy those much smaller boats and planes. So you got to put them somewhere out of the way. If you look at this model of Yamato, you can see that her midship superstructure is very densely packed and covered in guns. That is a much better use of your midship space. So where do her boats go? They're actually stored in an interior hangar. That ship was so large that they had enough interior space for the boats and planes to be in a hangar. And that was necessary because her 18.1-inch guns, the largest ever built, would absolutely destroy her ship's boats if they weren't inside the steel part of the ship. And so you can see at the back of the model, there are these two ports about 80% of the way down the hull, and there was an overhead gantry crane that could pick the boats up and take them out those ports and drop them. And that entire aft section was hangars for the aircraft and the boats. Other older American ships, like we've all seen Arizona, look at this model of her, the amidship section, absolutely covered in boats. So very, very common. Now look at this model of Montana. This model is based on the 1940 plans. So the United States still hasn't entered the war yet, and it likely doesn't represent the ship as she would have been in service. But you can see between the two funnels are cranes and a number of boats. That is the exact same arrangement that the Iowa-class battleships were designed to have. And in early builders' models of the ships, that shows up. However, that valuable midship space was taken over by that three-tiered 40mm position. So we were able to either have a bunch of boats or have 6 quadruple 40mm guns in that same location. So they decided to go with the anti-aircraft battery. Eventually, in peacetime, the Iowas would carry most of their boats at the fantail. They tended to always carry a pair of 26-inch motor launches amidships that could be launched in an emergency. If you've got a man overboard or something like that, there's a boat already on the davits ready to go. And this is a relatively small boat. In peacetime, the fantail would have boats on it, but that meant that you could only fire the guns if they were firing over the broadside, or else you risk damaging the boats, which is fine in peacetime during drills. In wartime, not so great. Even so, the number of boats that the Iowas would carry, 6 in the 1980s, was nowhere near enough for the entire crew. Why was that? Look at what happened to Bismarck. She is absolutely shot to pieces over the course of a morning in May of 1941. None of her boats survived to go in the water. Her entire amidships section is on fire in any pictures, or you can't really see it in pictures because they're far away from the British fleet, but you just see this huge pillar of smoke that is the wreck of Bismarck sinking. And in any paintings of it, you see this entire midship section on fire. That's the biggest surface area of the ship. So if a shell lands, it's most likely to hit somewhere in that area. And when that shell explodes, your aircraft and all the gasoline for it, your boats and all the gasoline for them, are going to burn. They're going to splinter and turn into shrapnel. They're absolutely going to cause havoc on your crew members who are out on deck exposed. All of your gunners and signalmen and those sorts of positions. And so we see Bismarck doesn't get a single boat in the water and has a very small number of survivors. One of the first hits on HMS Hood earlier in that month was on her boat deck, that then caused a tremendous fire that likely killed most of the crew that was on the exterior deck of the ship, and so that when the ship sinks, you only see 3 survivors. The most famous one, signalman Ted Briggs, was in the forward superstructure. He's nowhere near the boat deck. Those guys were probably decimated before the fatal hit even landed. Hood didn't get a single boat in the water. Arizona, another famous battleship, had this huge boat park amidships. Not a single boat goes in the water. When the ship catches on fire, the boats just spread that fire further on the ship. And so all of these famous ships that you can think of suffer extremely fatal damage that results in a very low survival rate and no boats getting in the water. So the ship's boats aren't helping. So by the midpoint in the war, when the Iowas joined the fight, ships that had been built with a boat farm, like the other standard type battleships, like earlier battleships like North Carolina, have had their boats, and in some cases, like the South Dakota class, even some of their boat cranes removed. Ships like New Jersey, still under construction, have their boat farm deleted entirely. So what do you replace these with? The boats take too long to get on davits and lowered over the side. Ships like Arizona and Hood sink too fast to even launch their boats if they wanted to. Ships like Bismarck, their boats are shot to pieces, so they couldn't get them in the water even if they wanted to, even though she sinks relatively slowly. And so man-portable rafts are preferred. During World War II in the US Navy, this would have been the Carly float. They're tied absolutely everywhere, all over the main deck, on the side of the superstructure. You name it, there's a stack of floats there. As you look around this model of New Jersey, you can see them all over the place. By Vietnam, the Carly floats had been replaced by inflatable floats that had a hydrostatic release. They could tell when they reached a certain depth and would deploy automatically so that the crew doesn't have to deploy them. If there's a catastrophic wrecking event, which surprisingly seems to happen a lot with battleships, then you might not have time to untie a Carly float from the side of the superstructure and get it in the water. But these inflatable life rafts will just deploy automatically. So what do you think? Should ships like New Jersey have enough lifeboats for the whole crew, like we've all learned since growing up? Or do you think they're more of a liability than an asset? Let us know in the comments section down below. Consider how many boats you see on modern warships. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals. We really appreciate the support viewers like you have given us. There's a link in the description if you'd like to continue supporting us. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about our channel and the museum. Thanks for watching.